How would you describe the Murdoch University brand?
I think that's a good and challenging question, even though it's a simple one. And I think, firstly, just to distinguish between reputation and brand. And I think that the push since Professor Higgett joined as Vice-Chancellor some 10 months ago now has been on reinvigorating Murdoch's reputation, particularly its academic reputation. Remembering that we were created as a university back in the mid-70s, and therefore all the artefacts that go with that are here. If you get your academic reputation right, brand follows. Think of the prestigious universities in Australia and internationally. People go to Melbourne, to Sydney, because of Melbourne and Sydney, not necessarily because of anything of the moment. We can rediscover our academic reputation. That will help us. In brand terms, it's been put to me, and I understand it, that we're a challenger in and around WA and Australia generally. We're slightly edgy, we think a little differently, we are open and accessible, we're appealing therefore to a wide variety of individuals and groups. What we must be is a magnet for talent, and the brand must do its bit to interest people in Murdoch and Murdoch University, whether they're students, whether they're staff, whether they're mature, whether they're young. So high academic reputation with some really top quality research, as many ERA 5s as UWA, we don't shout about it. From that comes brand, challenger, edgy, available, accessible, high quality in what we do.
So if I'm a student in year 12, why would I be putting Murdoch on my list next year?
Because two things. One, you're coming to an increasingly established university. You know, coming along nicely some 30, 40 years after its foundation. Two, the standards we apply to our teaching and learning environment are very high indeed. We teach well, we care about students and are very keen to play our part to help them achieve their potential. Three, we open doors. We've got applied curricula as well as the pure disciplines, and in terms of economic return, although I don't want a university just to be a place that has that extrinsic benefit, but in terms of economic return, you begin on a very good path. I'd like to think that we can broaden. I mean, one of the things I've found in my shortish time here is it's a very local market, and I'd like those kids in year 12 in the suburbs north of the river to be thinking about Murdoch University as well as the natural catchment that is.
There's a lot of geography in it.
There appears to me to be, well, there is a lot of geography. WA is a relatively small population. It's therefore competitive across the 4 public and the 1 private institution, and people tend to coalesce around the universities that are closest to them. You've got the brand pull of UWA, of course, wherever you live in Perth. In WA, but I'd like to see Murdoch make inroads into suburbs that are on the other side of the river and further afield, yeah.
So it is a highly competitive market?
It's highly competitive. What's interesting, I think, about Australia generally, to go general then come specific, is recruitment tends to be regional and international. There isn't a lot of east-west travel. It's a bit more prevalent Melbourne, Sydney, Canberra perhaps, but so you either recruit regionally or you recruit internationally. Regionally in WA, yeah, it's tough, and with the deregulation of student numbers, the power of the University of Western Australia can impact upon Murdoch and Curtin and ECU if they choose to recruit unlimited numbers in particular disciplinary areas. What we have to do is respond to that, make sure that we are promoting the things that make us different and special, look for niche areas that perhaps UWA can't or won't provide, niche areas that reflect employment opportunities or just you know, different areas of academic study, and promote those actively. The international landscape, equally competitive. Australia competing with the UK and North America in particular. I think we need to do better as Brand Australia. Real opportunity to do that with the economic woes in Europe and the higher education policy mess in Britain. The States being its usual schizophrenic self. Australia has a moment, perhaps, to be that global magnet for talent. And I'm not sure we're doing that as well as we might as a sector at this point. But so the competition is different, but still acute in international markets.
So with such a diverse range of audiences, and clearly they are diverse, how do you communicate?
Many ways. I mean, I don't think there's one way to do that. And indeed, I've been talking with my colleagues in communications about the importance of being all over the various communication channels, from the very small story that might appear in a local free newspaper, through to the larger stories that reflect the outstanding work of our researchers or reflect the journey the university is endeavouring to make. We use every available channel to promote ourselves. Now, we're looking right now, in fact, at the next phase of campaign, as it were, and using new media, working with digital media, not just the established Facebooks and YouTubes, but the way in which you can promote through print media, but in innovative ways, is really quite staggering. And we've got, I think, some interesting ideas up our sleeve which will get us noticed in and around Perth and WA, speaking to those local and regional markets. Internationally, we're on the usual circuits, but it's about relationships, you know. Communication in part is not just about what you print or what you put on your website or launch down digital channels. It's about relationships, meeting the consul generals, meeting the ambassadorial community, being respectful and interested in what the countries that are neighbours to us in Asia, and we are certainly part of that Asian century here in Perth, with the same time zone as Jakarta or KL or Singapore, and getting to know them and how we best work with and in those countries is in and of itself a very important form of communication.
I'm assuming in all this the Asian students are the more important of the overseas students, or in number at least, perhaps not otherwise. Why do they come here? Why do they want to study?
Well, I think that's a really good and deep question. And two things really. I never want to fall into a trap that says international students are more important because of the dollars they bring to the university. Of course, the financial sustainability of universities is paramount, and the tuition that international students bring helps us to create the environment you see here at Murdoch today. But I think we sometimes forget what a force for good universities are in a very troubled world. And an international community, a diverse international community that lives together harmoniously in and around university campuses, speaks very well to the sort of peace, reconciliation, the idea that, you know, different communities, people with different ideologies and beliefs can live and learn together, is a really powerful statement. And the multicultural nature of universities is something to be celebrated. Why do they come here? Well, hopefully because we give them that stimulation, we give them that exposure to Australia. We are uniquely placed, I think, in Perth, being so close to our East Asian partners, that there is a safety and security factor, I think, in familial terms, for youngsters from, say, Singapore or Malaysia to spend time here in the West. And you know, I've made the journey from here to KL, from here to Singapore, and a couple of times I've sat next to people who've got experience of Murdoch, either as parents or as students, and it's been a wonderful free couple of hours of market research about how much they've valued and enjoyed their feelings, or their feelings of security for their children if they're parents here at the campus. So I think we trade on that intimacy. We're a relatively small community, one you can get your arms around. We're not dispersed and devolved. We know each other, people are on good terms, and that rubs off, you know, and that word of mouth spreads. That's your best marketing.
So, what does the year ahead hold for Murdoch University?
Big year. It is a big year. The reforms that we've planned and developed with our academic colleagues will be rolled out. We'll have a smaller number of schools. We'll have a more integrated supporting structure for those schools, all designed to reflect the academy, to reflect the idea of the university. That's what we are. We're a collegium, and we want somehow to reflect that historical perspective of the self-governing community of scholars. Any change process needs careful management, so we need to pay close attention to that. Need to keep people with us, and I think we will, because I think the push here is a positive push. It's not about saving money. It's not about closing courses or departments. It's about refitting the university for a stronger academic university, making a good university better. So there'll be a little bit of introspection in that process, inevitably so. At the same time, though, the very fact we're doing that is getting us noticed. Returning to the ideals, if I can say that, of a university has been noticed in Canberra, in Melbourne and Sydney, and of course in WA. Having in the senior leadership team 3 very eminent scholarly colleagues, Professor Higgett himself, Professor Capling and Morrison, is setting a tone in terms of the nature of the academic leadership of the university, what's expected of it. So I think this is a year, 12 months, where you'll notice Murdoch a bit more. You'll hear about us a lot more. You'll remember us. You'll hopefully feel reinvigorated about us. And the future, I think, is a very positive and bright one.
Excellent. And finally, the big challenges for tertiary education in WA for the next year?
Well, I think we've touched on a couple as we've spoken. The lifting of the cap on student numbers is prompting all kinds of speculation, reflection, and will undoubtedly impact upon behaviour. And we'll need to be mature enough as a community in WA to talk about that across the institutions. In a professional, mutually engaged and hopefully supportive way. We've got the half cohort, of course, coming through in 2015, which we're all planning for. It's going to add a particular challenge to that uncapped era. Responding to Bradley and Knight are national things, but as we've been speaking, the importance of the international community to Murdoch, to WA, can't be overstressed. Working with Perth Education City to reinforce the real attraction of this state, and this is a place, and a place where you can succeed and thrive, as well as learn and live, will be vital to us. And I think, yes, exploiting the strong links we have with East Asia, but also rediscovering our place in Australia as well. Yes, we're a Western Australian university. We're an Australian university. We're an international university, and I'm sure that my colleagues in the other state universities would say the same. And we sometimes can look inwardly, not outwardly, and that in the long run is probably not a good thing to do.